The Republic was written around 375 BC and consists of 10 books. In this video, we'll talk about the ninth book in the Republic. Book 9 opens with a long and insightful description of the tyrannical man. The tyrannical man is a man ruled by his lawless desires. Lawless desires draw men toward all sorts of shameless, criminal things. Socrates' examples of lawless desires are the desires to sleep with one's mother and to commit a foul murder. All of us have lawless desires, Socrates claims. The proof is that these desires occasionally come out at night, in our dreams, when the rational part of us is not on guard. But only the tyrannical man allows these desires to emerge in his waking hours. The tyrannical man is the son of the democratic man. His father is not lawless, but he does indulge in unnecessary desires. Just like the father, the son is exposed to drones, men with lawless desires. But whereas the father had his own oligarchic father's thriftiness to pull him toward the middle road of democracy, this son, brought up on the democratic ethos, moves further toward lawlessness. The father and entire household try to win him back, but the ultimate triumph of the lawless is inevitable. The winning move of the drones is to implant a strong erotic love in the son. This love itself acts as a drone, and it incites him to all manner of lawlessness. It makes him mad and banishes all sense of shame and moderation. This man now lives for feasts, revelries, luxuries, and girlfriends. He spends so much money that he soon runs through all he has and needs to begin borrowing. Then, when no one will lend him any more, he resorts to deceit and force. He does unjust acts in his insatiable need to quench his erotic lusts. First, he tries to get money out of his parents in all sorts of awful ways. Then he starts breaking into houses, robbing temples, and finally committing murders. He has become, while awake, what he used to be only while asleep. He is living a nightmare. Erotic love drives this nightmare, keeping him lost in complete anarchy and lawlessness. He will dare to do anything to keep feeding the desires that erotic love produces. Soon he cannot trust anyone and has no friends. The most decent parts of his soul are enslaved to the most vicious part, and so his entire soul is full of disorder and regret and is least free to do what it really wants. He is continually poor and unsatisfied, and he lives in fear as well. After this frightening image of the tyrannical man and his tyrannical life, everyone is ready to agree that no life could be more wretched. Socrates, however, disagrees with this statement. He says there is one sort of life even worse than this one. That is the life of a man who is not only a private tyrant but who becomes an actual political tyrant. To make us see that this life is even worse, he asks us to imagine what would happen if this private tyrant, along with his entire family and his slaves, were moved to a deserted island. Without the law to protect him from his mistreated slaves, would not the tyrant fear terribly for his life and the life of his family? And what if he were then surrounded by people who did not look kindly on those who abused their slaves? Would he not then be in even greater danger? But this is just what it is like to be an actual tyrant. The tyrant is in continual danger of being killed in revenge for all the crimes he committed against his subjects, whom he has made into slaves. He cannot leave his own house for fear of all his enemies. He becomes a captive and lives in terror. The real tyrant is also in a better position to indulge all his awful whims and to sink further into degeneracy. The tyrant, who is also the most unjust man, is the least happy. The aristocrat, the most just man, is the most happy. So we were wrong in Book 2 to conclude the opposite. This is the first of our proofs that it pays to be just. Now, Socrates provides us with the second argument for the conclusion that the just life is the most pleasant. There are three sorts of people in the world, goes the argument: truth loving, honor loving, and profit loving. Each one of these people takes the greatest pleasure in whatever it is they most value, and thinks that the best life is the life that involves the most of this pleasure. Yet among these, only one of them can be proved to be right. Only the philosopher is in a position to make this judgment, because only he has actually experienced all these three pleasures. So we ought to believe that the philosopher, when he says that the pleasure of truth seeking is the greatest pleasure, if the philosopher is right, the pleasure one gets from having a just soul, that is, a soul aiming at fulfilling reasons, desires, is the best kind of pleasure. So, once again, we see that it does pay to be just. The next argument also involves pleasures. Socrates argues that the pleasure of the philosopher is the only real pleasure. All other pleasures are actually relief from pain, not positive pleasure. Other pleasures are not real pleasures because other desires can never be completely satisfied. All we do is quench those yearnings temporarily, easing the pain of wanting. The philosophical desire can be completely fulfilled by grasping the form of the good. Socrates now calculates that a king lives 729 times more pleasantly than a tyrant. This calculation is not supposed to be taken seriously, but is intended to emphasize that the just man is much happier than the unjust. Finally, Socrates presents two refashioned portraits of the just and unjust man to replace the false portraits outlined in the second book of the Republic. He asks us to envision that every human being with three animals inside of him: a multi-headed beast, a lion, and a human. If a man behaves unjustly, he tells us, then he is feeding the beast and the lion, making them strong, and starving and weakening the human being so that he gets dragged along wherever the others lead. He also fails to accustom the three parts to one another and leaves them as enemies. In the just person, the human has the most control. He takes care of the beast like a farm animal, feeding and domesticating the tame heads and preventing the savage ones from growing. He makes the lion his ally. The three parts are friends with each other. Socrates runs through various vices such as licentiousness and cowardice and shows how the three parts run amok to cause these vices. Socrates declares that it is best for everyone to be ruled by divine reason. And while ideally such reason would be within oneself, the second best scenario is to have reason imposed from outside. This is the aim of having laws. The purpose of laws is not to harm people, as Thrasymachus claims, but to help them. Laws impose reason on those whose rational part is not strong enough to rule the soul. So, this brings us to the end of the ninth book in the Republic. This was the ninth video in the series where we summarize each of the 10 books in the Republic. So, in the next video, we'll talk about the 10th book in the Republic. So, yeah, this is it for the video. I'll See you in the next one.